Up jump old Joe McGinnity. His eyes were bloodshot red. He poured himself more whiskey. This is what he said. I went down to St. James Infirmary to see my baby there. She was stretched out on a long white table, so cold, so sweet, so fair. Let her go, God bless her. Wherever she may be, you can search the wide world over, never find another man like me. Lined up 6 black horses, tied them to the hack. 7 going down to the graveyard. 6 are coming back. Let her go, God bless her. Wherever she may be, you can search the wide world over, never find another man like me. Never find another man like me. Never find another man like me. Something about old songs.
Oh, man. Beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. We had some folks ask about that guitar that you're playing, which we just pulled off the wall. So let's see what you got there. It is a 1951 Epiphone Emperor Regent. And for $6,000, it could be yours. It could be yours. But that's a beautiful.
You have to get it out of my hands first.
You got to pry it out of David's hands first. So wonderful. Well, I know. How long have you been in Nashville?
14 years.
14 years. Now, where'd you grow up?
I grew up in New York and Long Island.
Oh, okay.
Suburban D.C. till I was 11, and then we moved up to New York.
Yeah.
And there until 2005, we came here.
Did you come from a musical family?
Yeah, well, my mother still plays the piano. My father played the guitar. I don't know how well he actually played, but he went through a period of time of really being a classical and flamenco aficionado.
Yeah.
He had gone to college in Europe, in Amsterdam, and I think discovered that over there. So I had, and I wish I still had, the stack of Segovia records.
Oh,
I've got a couple of them. Some of them have vanished in the midst of time, but so I was aware of Segovia and Julian Bream and John Williams, but also of Doc Watson, and who was maybe my first guitar hero before I even knew it, I think. And my mother also grew up in Appalachian, Kentucky, So I grew up on a lot of mountain music. I knew Gene Ritchie records and old folk songs, and they were also kind of that 60s folk boom in those days. So there's a whole lot of music in the house, though. My mom would go from playing these old mountain songs to playing Bartok on the piano and stuff. And so there was a lot of music around.
You can't beat a rich heritage, musical heritage with your family.
It's really important.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. When did you start playing guitar? So pretty early? I mean, like
at 14.
At 14. Okay.
So
and then I saw that you went to Manhattan.
I did. Got my master's degree at Manhattan School of Music.
In classical.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, not an easy feat.
And a whole other realm.
That is
a whole world
that's
unto
a
itself.
serious school. Yeah, wonderful. Tell us about the work that you do here with Nashville Guitar Guru.
I've been teaching guitar for 30-some years, and since I lived in Nashville, I found myself working more and more with creative people, with songwriters, with performing artists, with people that are trying to find some kind of a musical voice or just be better able to express what they're hearing in terms of having the ideas but maybe not necessarily having the means to get them out there.
Yeah.
And it's a real, honestly, it's a luxury.
Yeah.
You know, to be able to teach guitar almost exclusively to people that are so deeply committed to what they're doing, even if they're not deeply committed to what you did in one lesson or another.
Yeah.
You know, that there is a real drive and a real desire to be better.
Yeah.
Because they're already so committed to what they're doing. And that's, you know, when I started working on the book, it's one of the things I started thinking about a lot is what creates the drive.
Mm-hmm.
And really what it came down to for me is that ultimately I think you fall in love.
Yeah.
You make the commitment for the same reason you make a commitment to another person. You say, I can't live without this.
Mm-hmm.
And when someone has an artistic connection like that, no matter how strong it may be in terms of their skill set, but that commitment and the desire to make that happen. And, you know, it's one of the things that makes Nashville so great is we're just, you know, we're surrounded by it everywhere you go.
Yeah.
There's a lot of inspiring people you come across on a daily basis.
Yeah. It's not strange to be a musician in Nashville.
It's strange not to be.
It's strange not to be. Everybody gets it. You know, everybody kind of understands what it's about and the struggles that you face as you're trying to become better. And you learn really quickly that not to think too highly of yourself, because the fellow asking you if you want fries with that probably plays better than you.
That's the running joke, and then you get here and you find out that it's true.
That is absolutely true. You learn that really quickly. But I know down in your teaching, you have taught for all kinds of things. You've taught for jam play, and what are some of the teaching venues that you have gone through?
Well, let's see. I did teach college for a few years. I was full-time in the music department at Tennessee State University, and was part-time at the Art Institute of Tennessee, and teaching guitar at TSU, music theory, music technology, and world music, listening skills, things like that. Just
all
whatever they needed me to do, I was game to do.
Yeah.
And that was really, I think, in terms of working in a formal environment like that, I'd always been, self-employed music teacher working out of a school or whatever. But to have to really account for your methods, to have to come up with that syllabus at the beginning of the semester, and know that that it was essentially a contract.
Yeah.
And that so you had to map out, you couldn't do, hey, what do you want to learn today?
Yeah.
It had to be all part of an organized program. And I certainly learned that way on the one hand. And on the other hand, it was good to get me to organize my thoughts and start really looking at sequentially, what do you need to understand to get from here to here?
Yeah, yeah.
And I also do a lot of workshops. I mentioned that I work a lot with songwriters, so I've been involved with the Nashville Songwriters Association International, NSAI, for good 12, 13 years, on and off now. And so I'll do workshops with them and other independent songwriting organizations and things like that. I love working with writers because, one of the things that I find really interesting, and it took me a while to figure this out, and there's a thing with Nashville, how the musicians, people fall into camps. The writers hang out with writers, and the pickers hang out with pickers. And even to that, studio players hang out with studio players, and the Broadway guys hang out with the Broadway. Everyone's in their own little world there. And I hear session players say things like, oh, God, the songwriter's sitting in on the session. Oh, no. They're going to have ideas.
Yeah.
And then you realize well, sure, they have ideas, but the thing that creates that weirdness sometimes is I've really come to believe that most people who write songs are practically hearing symphonies in their heads.
Yeah.
They're hearing a lot more of the music than they can necessarily express. It's a really unfair generalization to make.
Yeah.
But just in general, when someone decides that their emphasis is on the songwriting as opposed to on the instrument side of it, because God knows, we all know, songwriters that are just incredibly, ridiculously good musicians. There's a lot of that. But I really came to realize, first of all, even just in co-writing sessions and having these conversations with people and trying to figure out what somebody meant when they said, oh no, it's not that, it's this. And the language that they would use to try to describe what they wanted. And I realized you do hear it. You just don't have the vocabulary, or you don't have the patterns and the skill in your fingers to be able to show me what you're hearing.
Yeah.
But I know you're hearing it.
Yeah.
And there's this, you start looking back at your own experience of learning music. And there is this disconnect in the beginning between what you know how to do and all this other stuff out there in the world that you know you want to do it, but you just don't even know how it's possible. It was like the first time, so, I started playing guitar in 1980, so I'm hearing Eddie Van Halen and Randy Rhoads and going, that's a guitar? How does that even happen? How does that sound come out? And all of this music that it was guitar music, and I didn't even know I was hearing guitars. But just, you're not sophisticated about it yet, so you don't have the means to express it, but you know it's there.
Yeah.
And as you learn, it becomes, is an old Dylan song, man gave names to all the animals. It's like, you start to, oh, that's this, and that's this.
Yeah.
And that is one thing that, on average, when I work with people who are songwriters, their focus is on the story and the 3-minute movie, and people really study how to write good melodies and things like that. But in terms of having an understanding of music in terms of a bigger picture, I find that either people intuitively have that, or they just figured, well, I don't do that. I'm not a musician, I'm a songwriter, so I'm going to concentrate on what I know over here. And it ties in, to go beyond the songwriting thing, to something that I've observed with, let's say, hobbyists. I don't want to say amateurs. Let's say aficionados. I like that word. That same disconnect is there between what you want to be able to do or what you can hear, at least, imagine, and what you're able to put across. And so many people will say, well, I'm not really capable of being that good. I just mess around. I'm just having fun, or whatever. Or they struggle and they say, I'm not getting anywhere, and I tried, but I couldn't do it. And there is this, and thankfully I would say this maybe is changing now slowly, because there are so many resources out there. There are so many ways to teach yourself. And you can go on the internet and you can find so much out there, but there's still this kind of pervasive belief that people have, that you have it or you don't. And if you don't have it, then there's only so far you're going to be able to get. And so they say, well, I'm going to concentrate on this over here. And I look back at my education and this process of, essentially, you walk through a door and you're saying, here I am, mold me, show me how to be what I'm going to be when I come out the other side of this. And when you go through that situation, there's never any, well, maybe there is to some degree, because we all know teachers who feel like it's their job to thin the herd as opposed to elevate. Right? But there was never any question of whether I was capable of doing what I was being asked to do. I was just being asked to do it. Now think about high school math class. You couldn't do your algebra homework. There was no, oh, well, you must just not have aptitude for it. No, there was, you're going to learn how to do algebra.
That's right.
Because there is a concrete process here, and there are rules, and there are principles, and all of this is understandable when it's presented right. And music is no different.
We often think, fall into thinking that we think it's just this mystical, oh, that person was touched, there, and they've got it, and this other person, well, I try and I'll never be able to. You're exactly right. That's kind of a unique thing to the arts, that you kind of fall into that. That in even in believing it in yourself. that
sure.
there are some people that have it, and he just has it, and I just don't. And that's not necessarily true. You can build your skill. You can increase. Don't believe the lie out there that you can never get any better, especially as an adult. That lie is always in your head. Well, that's about as far as you're going to go. You ought to be content with that. Don't necessarily believe that lie. That could be a complete untrue statement. You can get better if you just keep working at it.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the, I shouldn't say one of, maybe the single biggest issue that people have is that belief that you have it or you don't.
Yeah.
And so you start off with something. I mean, I can't think of anything else in the world, any other endeavor that you might start off at saying, well, I know I'm never going to be any better at this or significantly better at this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Mm-hmm. Although I suppose, someone likes to play golf on the weekends and figures, I'm no good, but I have fun. I've heard people say things like that. But there's no mysticism to it.
Yeah.
And there's no denying that there are some people that just have these amazing gifts. But I think it comes down to people have aptitudes in one direction or another. And I started in the course of working on this book really thinking about, well, what was my process with this? What did I discover? Why do I think I came to it? Which, like I said, I fell in love with it. But there was more to it than that.
Yeah.
And then what were the learned things, and where did I pick up these lessons? Who showed me the way with this?
That's right.
So it was really fascinating, even just to me, to go back to that.
Let's talk to the person that's out there trying to get better, and they're looking for a good, let's narrow it down. They're looking for a good instructor in their area. What would be some things that you would suggest that they look for in a guitar instructor in their area, someone that they're going to learn from?
I think one thing that really strikes me is that there are people who are good teachers because they're able to really evaluate not just who somebody is and what they're interested in, but how they take in information and how they learn and where they want to get to. I think that there are teachers that are very doctrinaire about what they do. And I think there's nothing wrong with a teacher that insists on you need to learn this. But at the same time, there's still the context that the teacher has to consider. Who is this person? What do they want to accomplish? And it comes back to an insight that came to me. I don't even know how this, I think it was just contemplating these things, that everyone that I had been inspired by, mostly, were not highly schooled people. They were people who committed to something and chased it down and created something. And the process of, like I was talking about school, entering the door and saying, okay, I'm trusting you to shape this for me, that's very valid and that's very important. But I was ready to enter into that and to be molded in that way. And most importantly, I was in music college. I had no other encumbrances. I had nothing to mitigate my ability to commit myself to it. And I'm amazed by how often people come to me for lessons and say, well, I went to this teacher, but this happened, and I went to that teacher, but that happened. And nothing ever really clicked because the person they were working with wasn't figuring out how to give them what they needed. They were only giving what they knew how to give.
Yeah.
And I think that's the single biggest thing you need to find in a teacher, is someone who is flexible enough and attentive enough to figure out what you need.
Right.
I think one of the big problems, and maybe it relates to this have it or you don't thing, is that there are a lot of people who can teach talented people, who can teach someone with a gift and the love and the commitment. But as far as being able to teach someone that just wants to know how to do it and loves it, but doesn't have, like, they haven't gone down the rabbit hole with it yet.
Yeah.
Like, well, but what do you mean I have to learn sweep picking if I want to be a folk musician?
Right.
Which, that's a stupid example. No one's actually saying that, but you know what I'm saying. And there's no way to know that in the first lesson other than just to see if you can connect with that person on a personal level, and of course, to get a sense of, can they communicate? And most importantly, can they tell you along with showing you? Or can they tell you the what and the why along with the where do I put my fingers?
You touched on something a little bit earlier about, I think a good teacher knows the road, knows the path to get, once they figure out where you want to go, they don't just show you, well, here it is. There could be 17 steps that you need to take the student through to get them to that goal that they want to be at. And they don't necessarily, the student doesn't necessarily know where all the places that they need to go to get there.
Right.
And so it's foolish that we think sometimes, oh, well, I want to do this, and I jump immediately on YouTube and find that. Well, you'll learn that intro to the song that you're looking to learn, but you don't understand why it's working.
Right.
And so a good instructor can help you walk that path. They'll be able to tell you the path that you need to go on. So that kind of separates the good instructors from just the guy that's, trying to get some bucks on the weekend.
Well, and I think the other thing is you need to find someone that really is, here's where I'm going to upset people, a musician and not just a guitar player.
Right. Because
I think guitar players get tunnel vision. It's all about this all the time. And there's the rest of this. This is in the world, along with me, along with you, along with everything around us. And let's understand some context.
Yeah.
Let's learn something and say, well, this is what this is and why it matters. And I can't tell you how often I hear people say, well, somebody showed me how to do this, but they couldn't tell me what it was. Or they told me what it was, but it didn't make sense, and they didn't explain it further. There's this pervasive thing, and it might be, I was saying how the technology is making things more accessible to people, but it's also created this sort of the American Idol syndrome of guitar, where if you go and start following guitar accounts on Instagram, YouTube, or whatever, and it's today's 30-second shred, and I have great respect for the people that learn how to play that style and can do that, but it's this tiny little sliver of all the people in the world that are interested in the guitar.
Yeah.
But if you were to look at what you see on social media, there's an awful lot of emphasis on speed, on scales, on all of these really, I'm going to upset people. I'm not implying that those things are not important.
Right.
But they're not as important to everybody.
Right.
It's a question of what is most important. And, I come back to, I've been listening to guitar players for, 40 years and been just knocked out by so many different things.
Yeah. And
I can appreciate great shredding. I can appreciate a Paul Gilbert and the way that, of course, a guy like that has such a lighthearted approach to what he does that it's never oppressive, even when it's, rip your face off aggressive. Yeah. But at the same time, John Lee Hooker on one chord.
Yeah. Yeah.
John Fogerty on a riff.
Yeah.
And just, wow. And how something so fundamental and so simple can really be difficult to play, in the sense that maybe this riff was not technically hard to play, right? So if John Lee did, or whatever that is, and it's one thing to say, oh, well, that's nothing. That's just a bend on the G string, yada, yada. Okay, but do you feel what I feel when I listen to John Lee do that?
Yeah.
Are you getting that thing? And you don't have to be John Lee Hooker. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about, why does that feel the way that it feels? Where are the subtleties in there? We can all use the same words, but some of us are great communicators and some of us aren't.
Yeah.
So there's just so much more to it than all the nuts and bolts. And I guess one thing that really hit me in terms of finding a place for myself in Nashville was that there were lots of people who were great at communicating the nuts and bolts, and all that's important. And if I want to find a spot for myself, what's missing? And I think that's when you're trying to find, you hear people talk about their teachers, and the ones that always make the impact are not just the ones that communicate the nuts and bolts, but communicate the love for playing and the love for music and the curiosity and the interest in, well, what's that?
Yeah.
That is inspiring.
Yeah. And so important in your knowledge. There is, the nuts and bolts and the vocabulary of it all. But there's so much of it that it's just sit down and try and make a sound out of the thing that is pleasing to you.
Yes.
Try and make some music out of it. I remember we were talking with Will McFarlane, and who's just known for his tone, and Musicians Hall of Fame guitarist with Muscle Shoals. And I remember him just kind of saying one time, take one note and play it until you can get out of that note what you want to get out of it. And then you start building around that. It's not all about what you don't know. A lot of it is just take what you do know and try and experiment creatively around with it and make it do what you want it to do.
Right. Well, and if you think about craft in any area, in any discipline, your fundamental skills are all there. Anyone that can functionally perform that craft, they have the basics. They've got the nuts and bolts. But a real craftsman shapes the thing.
Yeah.
And shapes the thing in a way that's individual, but also very deliberate, very controlled, but still connected to what's the end result. This thing has got to have, it's got to communicate in some way. Exactly. Even if it's a purely utilitarian thing, it could be perfectly that.
Yeah, exactly. Gosh, so many things to get into, and I want to actually have you teach here in a little bit, but let's, we're already halfway through. We've got some questions happening here, but let's get to some announcements and give some wonderful things away here. We'll let Dave catch his breath here for a second. I wanted to let you guys know we've got our fingerstyle guitar retreat coming up on October 31st of this month. We have got one spot left for a lady. Actually, we've got, some folks were asking if they could come to the retreat if they just don't stay. So if you just don't spend the night there, then yes, we could probably accommodate one or two more folks. If you're interested, please let me know. It is right on top of us. We are 8 days away from our amazing fall fingerstyle guitar retreat. It looks like the weather's going to cooperate, and it's going to be nice and crisp and fall-like. And we've got international fingerstyle champ Don Ross is going to be with us, Ethan Case, and Van Larkins, Candy Rat Records artists, and it's going to be an amazing time. So we've got that coming up. But more importantly for that, because that's pretty much already filled at this point, is we've got our Summer Guitar Gathering Conference. You can go to Guitar Gathering 2020. Wow, that sounds so far away, but it's actually only a few months away, only about 6 months away, 7 months away, before we get to our Summer Guitar Gathering Conference. Already have starting to lock in guests. I talked to Australia's Got Talent winner, Joe Robinson, and Joe Robinson is going to be with us. If you're interested in coming to Nashville for 4 wonderful days, it's June 10th through the 13th this year, and it's held at a wonderful university here, and we have just legendary workshops happening on songwriting, on flat picking, on jazz, on improvisation, all kinds of things, and amazing night concerts as well. If you're interested, check it out at guitargathering2020.com, and if you register by the end of this month, I think it's October 30th is the day there. If you register by then, you will get all of the fretboard workouts that we have done on speed and agility, major scales, jazz chords, money chords, all that sort of stuff. You will get all of those videos as a bonus, but that's only until October 30th, so you got to register by October 30th. So if you're interested, check it out and register early, and you get all those bonuses for free as well. So that's that. Your website is NashvilleGuitarGuru.com.
Yes, sir.
What can folks find there?
I've been posting blogs on there for 7 years now. So there's a lot of articles, some on very specific topics, techniques for practicing scales, techniques for working with a metronome, general topics. Why does one want to know theory?
Yeah.
What does one look for in a guitar teacher? And then I did a series in the spring called Core Concepts, which was a series of blogs and accompanying videos just about what I felt like were 12 really crucial ideas. And things like make friends with your guitar, get physically comfortable with the thing. You know, I see so many people come in, beginners that are just awkward and struggling and haven't figured out how to just feel natural with it. And always posting new content up there. I've actually got a couple of things in the works right now that haven't gone up yet, but are going to be larger scale courses and things like that.
And
so that's all coming.
Quite a bit of playing around Nashville
I do.
as well. What are some of your gigs coming up?
One needs to, right?
Yeah.
Let's see what's coming up. I'm playing a writer's night tomorrow night at the Commodore Grill, songwriter's night, and next week I've got there's another writer's night. I gotta remember what it was. Friday night, the 1st of November, at the Donaldson Pub, doing an old school bar room gig with Power Trio.
Yeah.
And
I think you play with Brooks Sutton?
I played in a band with Brooks Sutton for
I saw some
9
videos.
years.
Yeah, because I've done some sessions with him. And
oh, great.
Yeah.
No, we still actually, I got a note from him this morning about setting up a session over at his studio. He's got an amazing place over in West Nashville.
Good. Let's give something away. I want to give away a shirt by our good friends over at Page Capos. We had featured some Page Capos a few shows back, and they had graciously given us a shirt.
My favorite capo.
Yeah, it's a great capo. This is an extra large, so whoever wins this needs to be an extra large. The winner of this is Jerome Hebert. Jerome, send me your information at service@mightyoakmusic.com. And we will send this out to you. Hopefully an extra large will work for you or someone that you know from our wonderful friends over at Page Capos. So I'm thrilled that could work out. Send me your address, what you won, screen name, that sort of stuff. I want to also mention we have got this wonderful guitar tool set. Maybe we can get a close-up shot of this, guys. This is from our good friends over at Music Nomad, and they have just recently inquired about being a sponsor of some of the stuff that we do. This is actually after I had chosen this. We had just gotten to know each other a little bit better, and they said, we would love to sponsor some of the things that you do. So this is a fantastic guitar tool kit, the best one that I have found to have in your guitar case. And so we have got this on special for the next few, I think next 2 weeks till the end of the month. It's got kind of an 8-in-1 tool here that you can tighten up pretty much anything on your pedals or even a Telecaster jack. It'll reach inside for that, which is notoriously tricky. It's got a knob puller. All of the hex wrenches and things like that are for these tricky little things on a guitar that you need to adjust. This is the best one of these that I have found. If you're interested, the guys will put up the link for that, and that's just going to be around till the end of the month. So get this. This is a great, comes in a great, metal case, and it's a good unit. So this is the Music Nomad Premium Guitar Toolkit. If you're interested, that's a good one. I just ordered some more today, so get that before the end of the month runs out. I want to talk a little bit about your book. Let's talk about your book.
Let's talk about the book.
It just came out?
Yeah.
This
2 weeks ago.
Yep, The Perpetual Beginner. I've done a good bit of looking through it, and tell us about what you're trying to accomplish with that.
Well, the book is what I'm calling an instructional memoir. I'm not going to say I invented the style because there's quite a few music books I've read over the years that I think were like that, where a musician is giving you some background on who they are and where they came from, and then using that to impart what it is that they're looking to impart. And what it came from for me was working with all of these people that were feeling like they were blocked or stuck. And in particular, I heard lots of people say, when do I get to be an intermediate player? I feel like I'm still a beginner. I'm still learning. I can do some things, but I'm still struggling.
Yeah.
And so it got me thinking about, well, okay, if you were going to define a quote intermediate skill set, let's call this functionally competent. Let's say you could walk in and sit in with a bar band any place with a basic level of competence and skill. What are the things that are missing? And I designed a whole course around that and that skill set and exercises and things like that. But it got me thinking to the bigger picture stuff. What's behind the scenes? What are the things that I learned that keep me fresh, that keep me engaged in what I'm doing and keep me from getting stuck myself?
Yeah.
And I started looking back at people I worked with, people I learned from, and I wanted to talk about those lessons. What were the formative experiences that taught me, oh, this is the way I need to see this? And taken all together, I think it made it possible for me to have a life in music as opposed to having a particular set of goals that either you reached by a certain point in your life or you didn't, or stagnating into, so many people. It just kind of settles off into, this is what I do, so it's what I'm doing, and I'm not growing, but I continue to do it.
Yeah.
I want to stay in love with it.
Yeah.
I want to stay motivated by it, and we all have our ins and outs with it, but given that that's what everybody wants, well, let's talk about what that really means.
Yeah.
And so the title does go back to all these people that are saying they feel like they're perpetually beginners, but it's also at the core of the mindset that lets you keep learning, which is to sometimes step away from what you think you know and say, I'm going to come back to this like I don't know anything.
Yeah.
Because I want to be that excited about it. I want to be that engaged by it. I want to not be intimidated by what I don't know because I don't know anything, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There's that initial stage where it's all exciting.
Yeah.
And there's a concept in Zen called beginner's mind, which is very much this. And there's a line from the book by Suzuki, and I'm not going to try to pronounce the first name because I can't, called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. And the line is, in the beginner's mind, there are many possibilities. In the expert's, there are few. Now, on the one hand, that's a little pat because obviously, as an expert, one has possibilities. One has solutions to whatever problem you come across. But you can also develop a level of tunnel vision in that, well, I've always solved this problem this way. If it doesn't work, well, what do I do?
Yeah.
How do I come at things from another perspective? And the beginner, the person who's new to something, doesn't know the right path, quote, right path they're supposed to take.
Yeah.
And so they just try. You're not afraid to
afraid
try
to
things.
Which is an important key in anyone's learning, is just that ability to just, I'm just going to try something, see if it works.
And it's funny how, going back to teachers and what you look for in a teacher, my first teacher encouraged me to try to learn things by ear immediately, even though he was teaching me to read, even though he was teaching me songs. I came in 14 years old. I want to play Stairway to Heaven, of course, like every other 14-year-old kid in that era, and start working on the guitar solo. He says, why don't you, he shows me a fifth position, A minor pentatonic, and says, why don't you start seeing if this can connect you to something there? And I don't remember how I did with it. I mean, I know I eventually learned that solo, but just the fact that right from the beginning he said, why don't you just pick it up and explore it? And I don't hear enough people encouraging that. Now, maybe a teacher might be working with someone on improvisation specifically, and obviously one has to practice that. But just the idea of going back to, little kid picks up the guitar. What was that? My wife captured video of our granddaughter, 3, discovering the piano the first time, and she went over to it and she plays a key and she looks up, and then she plays a couple more keys, and it was like, oh wow! And after about 5 minutes, she's there and she's banging on it with both hands, and I showed it at the book release party to lead in my talk because it was like, well, here it is. Here is the beginner being engaged by and 3-year-old delighted by what happens. No fear about what's going to happen because she doesn't know if she's doing anything right or wrong.
Right. And no frustration.
No frustration,
with
exactly.
With it as well. I've heard it sometimes described as you're trying to learn how to walk and you're a toddler. And so you eventually kind of pull yourself up on that, table, and you start to try and walk around, but you're going to fall 1,000 times. Not the least bit phased.
Right.
They fall down, they go pick right back up again. That's a good bit of that is how we should approach learning.
I think so.
And we get frustrated way too easily, and just realize that falling is part of the gig.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, you need to be able to get up and do it again, get up and do it again, get up and do it again, but also recognize when it's time to put that aside and go to something else, and recognize it's really okay. You're not quitting, you're not giving up, you're just shifting your attention from X to Y. Because when you go to this other thing, and even if it's just, I'm going to play something really easy because it's fun and it feels good. I had a student one time say something like, every time I pick up the guitar, I'm struggling. I said, we've worked on a lot of songs. Do you ever play any of the ones we worked on in the past? He said, no. I said, well, there's your problem. You put the effort into learning these songs, play them. Do something that's not hard so that when you are getting frustrated, you can remind yourself why you like doing this thing in the first place.
Yeah. Speaking of playing, let's play.
Let's play.
What do you want to play?
All right, so this is an original song in the key of E, and I wrote this with my friend Meg Williams, who's a wonderful blues guitar player, singer coming up around Nashville and doing very, very well.
Good.
So she and I wrote this thing about something that didn't happen. It was a losing bet. It was a lousy call. It was a bad idea. It could have cost it all. Count yourself lucky that it all went south. And it don't matter none, 'cause it ain't gonna happen now. No way, no how. But it ain't gonna happen now. No chance. I'm out. Just give it up. It ain't gonna happen now. I'm not gonna do it. I've had enough. No more wasting time. I'm done with all that stuff. So go on, forget it. You'd regret it anyhow. Get it out your head, 'cause it ain't gonna happen now. No way, no how. It ain't gonna happen now. No chance. I'm out. Just give it up. It ain't gonna happen now. Come on, pick it. I had a plan, had it all worked out. Should've known it would all go wrong, but I can't see it now. No way, no how. No, it ain't gonna happen now. No chance. I'm out. Just give it up, it ain't gonna happen now. Yeah, just give it up, it ain't gonna happen now.
Wonderful.
Nice.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. We've got a couple of questions that folks are asking about.
These are good questions.
Skip Russell is saying, do you suggest to your students that they learn how to read music?
Well, what I tell my students is that it kind of depends on what you're looking to accomplish. I do stress that reading rhythm, I think, is really, really important. Because, here in Nashville, for example, where so many musicians don't read, and in a recording studio situation, you're using number charts instead of traditional charts or lead sheets or anything like that, but you will still see the musical notation. I think if you find that tablature becomes limiting, then learning to read music really is a much more powerful way to get the information across. At the same time, it's a big chunk to take in.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to really make the commitment to wanting to learn how to read. I remember I learned to read in high school. I was taking classical guitar lessons, and I was learning my notes. And I spent a summer at Berkeley when I was 16,
Mm-hmm.
and got the experience of playing in jazz band and how to read chord charts, lead sheets, and things like that. But then I got to college, and I'm in class with violinists and flute players and horn players. They can all read circles around me because they've been playing in band and orchestra since they were 7, 8 years old.
Yeah.
And I couldn't keep up. I felt like the dumb guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
So I started practicing sight reading every day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got to be a good reader, is making that commitment to doing that. And I think it's a really great skill to have. I don't know that it's what I'd call an essential skill, just because there are clearly so many very successful people in the popular / commercial music world that don't read, but I'm never going to discourage it.
Yeah.
I do think that the rhythm is a very important part of it, though, and helpful for understanding rhythm.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing. My experience is exactly the same. I got to college, and our whole world as guitarists is harmonic.
Mm-hmm.
In a sense. We're dealing with chords and with progressions and things like that, and scales in that sense. And so when it came to theory and scales and chords, oh man, I blew circles around all these other people. Yeah. But when it came down to just sheer reading a whole line of 16th notes,
Mm-hmm.
that's where a clarinet major and a violin major start winning. They start winning the race then. Just ask them to spell a F minor ninth, and then it'll slow it down a little bit.
Sure.
But we each have our little piece of the musical pie that we are asked to do a lot more. And for us, for a guitar player, you're asked to do a whole lot more harmony and rhythm, and than you are sitting down and reading a full page thing of music. It's a helpful skill to have. I'm not diminishing that skill. I'm one of the biggest proponents in that skill. Don't walk around, illiterate musically. It's a good skill to have. I've got paid a lot of mortgage payments with, playing in musicals and things like that, which you just sit down and read music all night long. Mm-hmm. So I've done that when the guy next to me was just as competent. He just couldn't pull it off the page.
Yeah, and I think the other part of it is talking about the lifelong learning idea is when I want to get something new into my head, I can just pick up a book of music and read something.
Yeah.
If I want to learn something new, I don't need to hear it. I don't need to find a recording. I can look at it, have an idea of what I'm going to hear before I've played it.
Yep.
And that's really valuable. And it's been very gratifying.
Yeah.
Be able to, I'm digging through my classical guitar music for years ago. I hadn't touched a classical guitar. Well, I shouldn't say touched. I hadn't practiced classical guitar seriously in 25 years. And just recently started getting back into it again. And I am so enjoying being able to open up that book and just play the notes. And it's coming back quick, which is nice.
Yeah.
And same thing with a real book or something like that.
Exactly. Larry Garnett is asking, how do you impress upon a student the importance of knowing a little bit of theory?
There's a couple of answers to that. One is the pat answer, which is, well, why do you want to be ignorant?
Mm-hmm.
In a place like Nashville, where we're so surrounded by great intuitive musicians, people that are so talented, that grasp things that most of us had to sit down and study and learn, it's easy to think, back to the have it or you don't, that you have to take it in by hearing it, and if you don't understand it by hearing it immediately, then you're not going to understand it. But what theory did for me is it gave me the tools to solve problems. If I didn't understand what I was hearing, I could take a closer look, start to understand what it was, and given that if you're learning theory right, it's also combined with ear training. You're not just learning the math, but you're learning about sounds. That, to me, theory is just classifying sounds.
Yeah.
It's organizing sounds into categories and things that you can describe. And here are the ways that these things often work together. So when you're trying to learn something and you want to understand what's happening, having that theoretical underpinning really makes it easier to process the information. The other side, from a creative standpoint, say a songwriter who comes to me and says, I'm writing the same song over and over again, I'm using the same chords.
Exactly.
You don't have any options.
Yeah.
And people say, oh, well, if you know the theory, then all you're going to do is do what you're supposed to do. I say, no, that's not true. If you know the theory, you know what might ordinarily be done or most commonly be done, and you know 6 other things that could be done, and you could completely throw out the rule book and say, I know that theory class says don't do this, so I'm going to do it and see what happens.
Yeah.
So it gives you flexibility, it gives you possibilities, it gives you a way to understand music. And there's so many things that, I mean, you've seen this, I'm sure. It's very easy for someone, I shouldn't say it's very easy, someone who has some aptitude with the guitar and enough commitment to it can really learn to put their fingers anywhere. If they put the time into it, they can learn how to play the piece. I was doing it when I was in college, learning classical guitar pieces that were way beyond what I could understand. But I could read the notes, memorize what was going on there. But now, I can just understand it when I hear it. And now when I sit down to play it, now the music is talking to me.
Yeah.
It's not just a bunch of movements that I can't quite comprehend. You know, the theory is never just a bunch of math. It's like the laws of physics. This is the laws of nature. This is the way the world
How
works.
it works.
Why wouldn't you want to know that?
Yeah, how it works. Wonderful. We got one more here. 6-String Samurai saying, Dave, what is the most recent guitar thing that you've learned?
Okay. So over the last, let's say, year or so, and this is relating to my coming back to exploring the classical guitar, as I started doing a lot more fingerstyle, which I hadn't done really much at all. Never used a thumb pick as a classically trained player that was used to that thumbnail being the thing that hit the string. And I got so frustrated with the fact that I was constantly chopping off my thumbnail. And then on top of that, I was really getting into country guitar and specifically the lineage of, of Travis and Atkins and Jerry Reed and all of these guys. And I'm going, okay, thumb pick. Let's take a look at this again.
Yeah.
And when you really start to explore that style, and I know you know this stuff backwards and forwards, there is no way to get that sound properly without a thumb pick to me. And the other thing that struck me when I really started to explore it was that it made me took a completely different look at my right hand technique. And it really re-educated my thumb. And it took several months before I started being even remotely comfortable. Because when you're used to the thumb being right here and then suddenly it's out here, but it makes you use the muscles in a very different way. And so now I've developed really 2 different approaches, because one is when I'm playing classical style and I want the thumb in, and one is using the thumb pick. And it's been a very interesting thing to explore. And related to that is that I started, even around the same time, using much heavier picks.
Yep.
So I'm using a V-pick red rocker here right now, which has
thick as can be.
no flexibility to it. I always use more flexible picks, and that made me start to look at my right hand attack, not just the way I'm using the muscles, but how am I getting tone out of the guitar. So I almost started to rethink my entire right hand, just coming back to that.
Yeah.
Which is not really a new trick, except that it is. It's looking at the old trick a new way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's whatever that is. That's powerful.
So many different ways to approach playing. You know, the pick choice. I used to never think about picks. I haven't played seriously with a thumb pick in a long time, but when I was in college, I played exclusively with a thumb pick, and I did jazz stuff. And I wasn't doing bluegrass or Merle Travis. I didn't even know what that was. I was just needing to figure out a way I could play jazz and bass lines at the same time.
Right.
So, wonderful. All right, we need to land this ship. Let's give away something else. Can we give away one of your books?
Yes, let's.
Would you be so kind to autograph it before we go?
Sure.
We are picking another name for this. It is coming. Let's pick another name. Let's do Gene C. You have just won Dave's new book, The Perpetual Beginner. Gene C., send me your information at service@mightyoakmusic.com, and we will send it out to your name, your address, what you want, all that sort of stuff. Gene, and then the letter C. Congratulations on winning that. That is wonderful. Let me give you a couple of announcements before we go. Let's give away one more thing too. I want to give away a John Pierce set of folk guitar finger style strings. These are great strings from John Pierce Strings. Let's give these away to Junior Stevens. Junior Stevens, you have just won a set of John Pierce folk strings. Great strings. Send me your information, Junior Stevens, Gene C., and whoever the first one was, to service@mightyoakmusic.com, your address, phone number, whatever, and that way we can get these things to you. All right, that's enough of that. If you're interested in learning more about Dave and all of the wonderful things that he is a part of, you can check his website out at NashvilleGuitarGuru.com, and you can reach him there. And he's available for, do you do Skype lessons?
I do Skype lessons.
Okay, so he's available for Skype lessons. If you're in the Nashville area, you can catch him, and definitely check out the book online as well. Let's see if there's any more announcements I need to do. Yes, check out, if you're interested in the guitar toolkit, check that out. Get that before the end of the month, because at the end of the month this is going to go away. And then our Guitar Gathering 2020, if you're interested in planning on coming to that, June 10th through the 13th, register early and you'll get every fretboard workout series that we have done. So it's $100 worth of video training for free. But you have to order by October 30th, so don't wait on that. I think that's all the announcements that I have. We are going to be doing a live lesson. We're going to play one more song, right, before we go? We've got a live lesson coming up next week. I want to talk about strumming. We haven't talked about strumming in a while, so I'm going to give you some keys and some tips for building up confidence and rhythm in your strumming hand. If you're kind of weak in your strumming, then it's a good check that one out. This will be for next week. I want to thank our producer, Stephen Quinn, our new audio person that's training tonight, Connor Morton. Glad you're here, Connor. Thank you for our wonderful moderators, Doug and Neil, and thank you so much for tuning in. Let's play something, or you play something.
Over to the telly here. Black shape digging in the bayou mud. Got a nose for trouble and a thirst for blood. Can't see with a lick, he's almost blind. Got a hardtack, one-track, razorback mind. Yeah, you know he does. Swamp hog sniffing in the bayou wind. Mean as a gator, ugly as sin. Better latch that gate, better leash them hounds. There ain't no telling what trouble they found. Tripping on secrets, digging up bones. Something should have been left alone. I love it, Telly. Jump in there with me, huh? With that rag scratching on a cypress tree, digging up things no man should see. A high hill tangled in a fishing line, somewhere a family sitting and crying, holding out hope but don't know when he won't never be seen again. Holding out hope but don't know when he won't never be seen again. Out on the levee in the midnight glow, love gone bad took a turn below, and nobody heard that shotgun sound. People been talking for miles around. How a good young man could have done so wrong, weren't much left for to send him home. Been holding out hopes I don't know when, but he won't never be seen again. Tripping on secrets, digging up bones, something should have been left alone.
Thank you so much,
That's
Dave.
a pretty guitar. Thank you so much for having me. This was a ball.
What a joy having you. Keep up the great work in your learning. Don't let anything stop you. You keep making music. Don't let any concept, anything that you're wrestling with stop you. Determine in your heart that you can do it. Hey, we'll see you guys next week.